Today on the ProgCast, I'm joined by someone that I consider to be a true musical kindred spirit, someone that we have toured and worked extensively together. We have recorded together on an album called Who Knew Charlie Shoe. If you know my
There it is.
discography, you know
There
that
it is.
this record is a very particular and very important record for me. We're going to talk all about that.
Hold
But
on.
finally convinced my conspirator and longtime friend Richard Leo Johnson to join me for a chat. Welcome, Rich. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Speaking to you from a remote village in the Yucatan where we live now. And I just wanted to warn you that every once in a while the Pepsi truck will drive by to deliver Pepsi to the local tiendas.
Okay.
And also every once in a while they have a lot of those little tricyclette motorcycles, the little taxi cab things that run around, and you'll hear that every once in a while. And a dog, maybe a cow. So that's my soundtrack for today.
I'm happy to be introduced to your sonic universe of late. But Richard and I, we go back, and I was thinking about this before we finally decided to sit down and do this, is that we started in the 90s. Didn't
It's
we
true.
start? We started in the late 90s working as a duo.
I think so, because I remember I had done that first record for Blue Note, and then I was it was only about a year later we did the second record, and Jay Newland was doing the recording for that, and he came down. I was living in Arkansas at the time, and he came down, and he said, "Yeah, Rich, there's this guy you need to meet. Y'all are kind of like two peas in a pod, or you came from the same, whatever." And
Because
and
I
I said,
had done, and people should know, because I had simultaneously been recording, Jay had been recording me
yes,
as a
yes,
solo percussionist for the Definite Pitch album, but also the Cecil Taylor trio record in Fluorescence, where I was playing all manner of weird percussion in Cecil's
right,
music. And Jay must have said, "Oh, this guy."
yeah, right. He said, he basically, I think in a gentle kind of way, he said, "Y'all are both kind of insane in the same way."
You guys are
And
both
I
a
said,
little off.
yeah, a little. Anyway, so, and I'm self-taught completely. The way I play the guitar. I mean,
I
I
wanted to
had no.
talk about that. That's so interesting to me. I wanted people to know Richard is self-taught to the point where he was doing experimental tunings with the 12 string and coming up with, I mean, check out Fingertip Ship if you have not heard Richard's Fingertip Ship. But a kind of virtuosity emerges in addition to a kind of experimentalism where, I mean, how would you describe your early stuff if we're talking about that material?
Um, well, I had a quote that I used a long time ago. I said, it's like Jackson Pollock running amok in a Mies van der Rohe building is kind of the because the structure, there was a structure, but then there was the chaos sort of inside the structure.
I'm
And
so
it was,
glad you mentioned that, because we're going to have to also right off the bat mention to people that you are a visual artist and being a very serious photographer and a well-known architectural photographer.
you got to make a
And that's
living.
and that's how you make your living. And that music has been an equal maybe or a secondary love, but I know that music and the visual world for you are connected. And
Yeah.
we've had
Well,
that conversation for so many years.
Well, the thing about, I mean, I started my first guitar I got when I was 8 years old, because I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I had to have a fucking guitar. Excuse me, can I say that? I
Yeah.
had to have a guitar. Anyway, so anyway, I got a guitar and I took a couple of lessons, but the people that I was taking lessons from, like, they wanted to, it was a small town in South Arkansas. People were trying to, they wanted me to learn a Monkees tune or something like that, and learn scales. And I said, no, and even at that age, I think I had autism or something like Charlie. Anyway,
Hmm.
But anyway, I just decided to go off on my own with all that, and it never really stopped. So it really was my first passion was
Oh,
playing the
before. So when you
guitar.
you went to art school, what's happening there? And where was it again?
University of Arkansas up in Fayetteville.
Good program. And you're doing visual and music separately or together?
No, I just studied art, and I started out with just regular basic art classes and stuff. Then I found photography, and I really fell in love with that. And then, the whole time I would go I would go into the stairwell in the dormitory and play. The guitar had that giant echo chamber in the stairwell, and I would just sit there for hours playing the guitar until people started throwing beer cans at me and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I never stopped playing the guitar, and then my wife Jane, who I met the first day of school, we were met at just whatever, going to some party, and the next thing I know, she invited me to come play the guitar in her female dormitory, which was pretty exciting for me because the way I played the guitar had nothing to do with romance. you know, it was it was all it was nothing romantic about it at all.
Was all your early stuff really hyper rich? Were you
Yeah, yeah.
you were highly caffeinated, right?
Oh my God. And I didn't even, yeah, yeah. Well, I was anxious. I guess the way to put it is I was always anxious to find out what was going to come next. So
Mm,
I would just play, and like, I just felt like if I played fast, I could express those ideas because I was kind of hyper as a kid,
yeah.
and it worked out. But yeah, early on, yeah, pretty hyper.
But I mean kinetic,
Yeah. You
right? I
mean,
mean, if you want to talk about Pollock, people compared Taylor's work to Pollock, and the
of
idea
course.
is that there's a visual, sonic, directed energy.
Yes. Well,
Fair?
what I was going to say is that because I can't read music at all, and everything's reliant on what I hear and what I see, it's a visual thing. Memorizing where the fingers are on the guitar, that's 110% visual, because it's like if I am playing the guitar and I was looking at it and I saw these patterns
Right.
and patterns and shapes, and then the sound turns into tonality and kinetic. Yeah, I mean, it all made perfect sense for somebody like me who didn't have the patience or the intellect to learn, notation and theory and things like that. And
But you learned music construction in your own way. And I think it's interesting when you look at guys like yourself, or even, let me just say, Alan Holdsworth, who came up with his own system
yeah,
of
yeah,
how shapes
yes,
and forms that make certain sounds
yes,
would
yes,
be available to him.
exactly, exactly.
Tunings could be changed, fourths or
Yep,
fifths. He was a
right.
tuning guy too.
I
So,
didn't realize that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
So, it's interesting to me because I'd like to know then, when did you start playing the guitar as a sonic expressive instrument? When was it going beyond playing nice finger style stuff? Were you always finger style?
Yeah, I always played with my finger. They started out with a plectrum, and I immediately didn't find. I found it kind of limiting. So I started picking around with my fingers and stuff like that. And then I was doing that, and then I heard this is a great story. You'll appreciate this. A friend of mine gave me a cassette tape, and it wasn't labeled. It was just a cassette tape. I think I told you this story.
It's a great
But anyway,
story.
yeah. And on one side was Leo Kottke. The album Greenhouse. I don't know if you're familiar with that record, but it's fucking ridiculous. Excuse me. And then on the other side was Intermounting Flame with McLaughlin. And I thought, for some reason, I don't know why, I said, "Oh, well, it's the same guy just to playing, one's playing electric guitar and the other is playing acoustic guitar. And I said, well, that's just, I thought it was the same person. I swear to God, you know. Oh, there's the truck.
It's okay. We're doing pretty good on muting.
Okay, that was the dump truck going to dump. Anyway, so
no
I thought it was
Zappa. Okay,
dude, I thought it was the same. I thought it was the same guy, and I hit my head. I didn't get over that until I talked to my friend. I don't even know how long later, and he was dying laughing. He said, "No, those are two different people," and then he told me who they were. So there you go.
Okay, so I never pushed you past that point to say explicitly, what did that do to your mind?
What did it do to my mind? It created an enormous amount of confusion for me because I knew what the acoustic, I never played the electric guitar, right? I never played the electric guitar. And I just thought, how can I make the acoustic guitar sound similar to that in a way by just playing it acoustically? And I thought the only way to really do it was just to play faster, you know, because McLaughlin, I mean, are you kidding me? It's like, and so I just started trying to do whatever I could to make the guitar sound, you know, fuller and faster and all that stuff.
Okay.
So no, it was very confusing because I couldn't imagine melding those two things together. So, and then my parents, at one Christmas, they gave me an electric guitar and an amplifier. And it didn't make any sense to me at all because it didn't have any like physical, when you hold on to it, you don't feel it right here in your solar plexus, you know, when you play. So I just got frustrated with it one day. I put the amplifier down on the ground in the living room facing up, and I laid the guitar on top of it. And it was just feeding back like constantly going like that. And I just walked away from it. And went to my bedroom and was like sitting there and just sort of listened to that hum and the rest of it. My mom came home and she said, what are you doing? And I said, I don't know, Mom. I really appreciate the electric guitar, but I don't think I know what to do with it or whatever. Anyway, but that was my first experience with an electric guitar. I just turned it into a sound, like a feedback machine. Anyway, and
Talk
I'd
to
never,
me,
yeah.
but talk to me about, and I put you in this arena of guys. Talk to me about Hedges. Talk to me about Richard Thompson or Fahey. I mean, these
Yeah, no,
guys.
yeah. Now Fahey is the godfather of what he did was he recycled traditional blues music and turned it into his own thing. And if you remember, his catalog of the early recordings was just straight up, you know, him playing the guitar, and he channeled these characters, Blind Joe Death and that kind of stuff, and he would use those things as a jumping off point, which I thought was really brilliant. I loved the way he played. I thought it was really interesting. But I was more fascinated with Kottke because of the speed and the complexity of it. That was just how my brain was working. And I'd never heard Michael Hedges until much later, and somebody played it for me, and I'd already listened to. There was some other people that were doing some things like that, like Stanley Jordan, you know, with the two hands and stuff like that. And there was other guitar players that played kind of a percussive style, but he was the one that I think, and he's a really great performer.
Right.
Hedges was, you know. So, but yeah, that kind of was pretty amazing. But I'd already sort of um, gotten into my own thing at that point, you know, where it didn't really influence me so much, but I did borrow a couple of things from him. But and then Richard Thompson, of course, I got to play. I was fortunate enough to get to open a couple of shows for him at one point, and
Did you guys
he
hang
was,
out?
yeah, a little bit. He thought I was kind of nutty, you know, and everything, but he appreciated it. He really did. I remember I was doing a couple of shows. I was touring some with another percussionist. His name was uh, uh, Judd Martindale, really good guy, very much like you. Uh, and we were doing a show in Dallas. I was scheduled to open for Richard Thompson at this place in Dallas. And his manager came up and he said, no, 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 you can't have a percussionist. You have to do solo. And I said, oh man, come on, please. And my manager said, can you just listen to the sound check? And Richard came out and he heard me and Judd play and he liked it so much. He said, no, let him do it. Just let him do it. So that worked out really, really well. But he's such an amazing entertainer. I should say entertainer. Well, he is a great entertainer, and he's really, really by himself. I personally like him by himself better than his band. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying something like that.
No, I want to hear it.
No, but when I first heard him play and sing, because his voice is so amazing, and I think his acoustic guitar sound is really amazing, and his electric guitar sound to me doesn't feel like the whole package like it is when he's doing the solo acoustic gigs. To me, that's just me. But anywho, but above and beyond that, I guess when you lock yourself into, 20 some odd years of playing and developing your own thing and having it all up in your head and never playing publicly for the most part, I was settled into this thing in my own head.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, I never really listened to much other guitar players after that. I listened to some Metheny, and I love the ECM series and all that kind of shit. Oh yeah.
New Chautauqua?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, Miles Davis, I was introduced to Bitches Brew when I was in high school, and I never got over that. And so yeah, the thing is that, Pete Townsend, Live at Lee's, Jimmy, all that stuff. So it wasn't I wasn't a purist in terms of like a acoustic fingerstyle guitar kind of person. To me, I like all that stuff. I like Uriah Heep, for God's sake.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, of course.
I was watching a video of them the other day, and it was like this old black and white video of them.
No, man, come on. You cannot sleep on Heap. No. If you care about hard rocking bands, there are few others who have kept it going to this moment with original Mick Box still killing it. I go every time. My friend Phil plays organ with them. Killing.
Are you serious? Oh my
God. I'm very serious. Phil Lanzon, one of the motherfuckers of heavy rock. These guys are in their 60s and 70s, and they're killing it. And the material, and you can't argue with the material. Richard, it's so funny. You're the first person that's brought up Heap on this 100 and something episodes. Doesn't surprise me. I grew up.
Another one. Go ahead.
I grew up with that music.
Sure.
Magician's Birthday, man. Demons and Wizards and just so much of a, what did anybody care about the line between Pog, Prop and Pog and Prog and Pop and Rock and Heavy and whatever? David Byron is a god.
Yeah. Well, when you and I talked about Gentle Giant even, back in the day, and remember we were at that prog rock festival thing, and was it the guitarist from Gentle Giant was there, or who?
Gary Green.
Yeah. And you introduced me to him, and I was like, oh my God, those are the kind of things that make you nervous. It's like when I saw them open for Jethro Tull, I was like 17 years old. I was like, oh my God, But anyway, the other thing I was going to say, I'm going to mention.
You think I'm going to let you go past that, sailing past Giant?
No.
Opening for fucking Thick as a Brick. We're coming back to that. Go ahead.
But anyway, the other band I'm going to mention that I know that nobody else has mentioned on your show is the Shags. Have you
well aware of them? Saw them open for NRBQ.
Did not. How long ago was that?
20 years ago.
Were they doing their thing?
Two remained, and Tommy Ardolino, bless him, sat in as the drummer. And it was a partial reunion opening for NRBQ's 35th or 40th, and probably 35th. And so Sun Ra Orchestra opened. This was up in Massachusetts. So I saw the
Wait,
Shags.
you saw the Shags, the two chicks from Vermont, yes, whose fathers thought they were going to be superstars.
I saw it live, and it was exactly what you would expect.
I've never laughed so hard in my life when I
Why,
heard.
why do you bring that up, though?
Because you said nobody brought up the other ones.
Oh, okay, good.
I'm just
Okay,
going to try one more. It's like a slot machine, you know.
big ups. But I
Okay,
will
okay.
say something to you about this.
Yeah.
It's come up a lot, and I'm thinking about it a lot. Doug Lunn, the great bass
Yeah.
player and music conceptualist, hit me with this very hip idea, which I think is so interesting, which is in music and in many art forms, there is pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional.
Post-conventional instead of unconventional. Where does unconventional fall into that?
I would say you could take it. Yeah.
Okay.
So isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Because in many ways, if you're not a snob,
Yeah.
things can happen in pre-conventional work. Some people will call it outsider art, some people will call it primitivist, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. There's something happening there
Yeah.
that takes it away from knowing the conventions.
Right.
So to what degree is Richard Johnson really invested in the conventions, and to what degree is Richard Johnson having play at everything he's ever been interested in, and what is the visual equivalent of this chord, and what does this chord make me think of? And do you see things when you hear things?
Okay. Now, okay. Yeah. Now, okay. Hold on one second. That was a lot. Um,
Agreed.
okay. There's a combination of things happens when I'm starting to make up stuff on the guitar, and there's when things. Sounds really weird. I don't know if this makes any sense or not, but I do see things, and when I hear things, and I hear things when I see things,
Mm-hmm.
and I also. This is going to sound strange. I smell things and I taste things and I feel where do you think goosebumps come from? Right? Have you ever been in the middle of doing a musical thing and all of a sudden you just get goosebumps and you know something's right, something's going proper, you know? When I'm writing or making up a song, I used to laugh with my wife. Every once in a while I feel like the blood rushes from my nose and my nose gets really cold and I can feel it going up like this. And I used to feel that when I was younger, when I was writing or making up songs. I thought, I'm, I must be on the right track. I said, it's like a bloodhound, sniffing in the woods or something like that. But yeah, if you don't connect with all the senses, personally, I think, if you don't connect with all the senses, then you're only connecting, you're limiting yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes,
No.
but here's
I,
the thing, that since it comes up with guys like Andy Partridge, who's a friend and has been on the show multiple times, experiences what we're talking about, which is called synesthesia. So the
Synesthesia.
synesthesia, the senses are mixed.
Yeah.
So you can smell a sound, as I
Yeah.
have. You can
Yeah.
taste certain. I've felt sounds in my mouth.
Sure.
Yeah, like the way you would feel like pastini or something like beautiful and smooth in your mouth, or something crunchy. Like I have everything's firing at the same time, and just sort of what in vibration am I tuning into? I'm like,
Right.
am I seeing? Because I remember I saw Japanese pickles when I was crunching them in LA, Alex Klein. And, and I saw what it looked like. The sound of the crunching had a visual.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
fantastic.
And I remember it to this day, and they were incredible pickles. And Alex is like, what is this for you? Like, I'm like, it's like they're like tiny little press rolls. So then I
Oh
had
my,
even a percussion sound for it. I remember this vividly. And so, yes, those moments are not everybody. And it's weirdos like us or people who are wired a certain way. I mean, I don't know. Look, I bang this drum and beat this horse to death, but my early sound visual experiences were so intense in my childhood
yeah.
that I guess it was sparked early, like at 5 when my mom took me to see Planet of the Apes in 68. She thought it was a nature documentary,
Wait a
Rich.
minute, stop right there. My mom took me to see 2001 Space Odyssey when I was about 8 years old. I'm a little older than you, or
That's
whatever I was.
right. That's right.
And my mom took me to see that movie. She had no earthly idea what we were getting into.
Who knew? Who knew
I know,
anything? You could
but
be
that
blown out by things that came out of nowhere.
no, but the funny thing is that we had to rely on our mothers to take us to the movie theater to experience something that changed our lives like that. I think that's really funny. I think that
It
proves, yeah, that's so funny.
it's so it's wonderful. It's I
How was your
thank
mom? I remember your mom and dad came to Savannah. Remember that?
Oh yeah, I do remember that. You were
That
so
was so
kind
sweet.
and you
They
took
were
them.
so sweet.
Well, my
Yeah.
dad's gone 11 years now,
No.
but my mom's is still kicking it hard, and going and doing stuff. And
Yeah.
she remembers you and that time with my dad and being in
It was
Savannah when
fun.
they traveled. And
Yeah.
well, the thing is, my folks were cultured.
Yeah.
So they really wanted to experience things and get a different taste of life in different parts of the world. My mom couldn't fly because
Huh.
she's claustrophobic. She can't fly, but she would travel as much as she could. They came up to Quebec City when I played up there with the musical box. They drove up. They're happy to. I mean, what's better than a road trip? And by the way, memories of you and I in road trips. In the middle of the freaking night after a show, trying to drive half the way to the next gig and get a hotel and then get up and drive half the way the next day.
Do
I,
you? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
just enjoyed those so much. And I would say that's a rarity in life that you would have a co-pilot like that.
Yeah.
And you guys could keep it. And you'd say to me, how you doing? You awake? You good? All right, let's talk about Uriah Heep or something like that.
Hey, do you remember you and I were driving back from, we're going back to your house, and we had just, I think we played in Baltimore or something ridiculous like that. And we were driving back on the New Jersey Turnpike. You remember that car pulled up next to us, and somebody with a flash camera, like, flashed the camera in right at my face on the driver's side, and just like boom, it was like this big flash of light, and then they just went whoa and drove past us like that. And I think you were like either half asleep or you woke up and were freaking out about it or something. But it
Thank you
was
for
really
telling me that. I don't remember that. I love that.
it was frightening. But anyway, I thought I couldn't figure out why would somebody do something like that. Anyway, never mind. That's
Well,
nothing.
but that's
So
the thing is the road, there's
the
nothing
road
like it.
tell no, there's nothing like it. There's when for me, and what things really got bad for me was I was traveling by myself, and because I love my wife Jane and I've been together for a long, long time, and when I was on the road by myself, I didn't have anybody right, exactly, to share things with. Here's my ayahuasca vessel.
Jane. Happy
James,
birthday, Jane.
he's over there listening to us. Anyway, so
Is Jane entertained?
always. Anyway,
Can she hear us?
I think Jane. No, she's out in the yard.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay.
she's working with Danny. But anyhow, those times were really bad for me because I really missed her and our daughter was born and blah blah blah. You know the feeling. But so we've been together for a long time, and that was one of the reasons I just couldn't do it anymore because I really missed her, you know. But flying solo on the road for 200 days a year, it's not. It, I mean, it's tough. It's really, really, really tough, you know.
I did it in a Dodge Dart across the country, playing colleges, galleries, rock clubs, opening for percussion ensembles, doing workshops, playing and at clubs, and any place that would have me.
As a soloist.
80s, starting in 85, I started playing solo percussion.
Wow.
And my first solo record of percussion came out in 89 or 90. And then I had developed, the ability to, whenever I could, go out as solo because it was one of the things that I believed you had to do. I remember there's tons of stuff. I have so much solo stuff. It's crazy. But I did 2 discs. One is Research. The other is called Research. The other is called Definite Pitch.
Right.
And they're kind of, I developed to a point where I wanted to do tune percussion, but I also wanted to do drum set as a percussion instrument, as a voice. Preparations, different ways of approaching it, different rhythmic schemes, different techniques. And so like, that's the thing that Jay's right about. It's like, well, okay, so you're going to explore clamps and clips on things. Yeah. You're going to explore what Page beat us to the trick was, what's affecting the resonance of said string or, this disc.
Right.
How is that affecting the partials that come out? Is it affecting articulation? Okay, so now you have all this game to work with.
That's it. And see, you were doing workshops a lot too, right?
And I did workshops talking about this, not that it caught on as a thing, but I was saying, look, you can do complex rhythmic things, but I think that we owe it to ourselves to look at the way sounds are made.
Yeah.
For percussion, because percussion has become, this is an area of percussion that I felt was neglected.
Yeah.
Articulation. Right? Removing attack with bows.
Right.
Being able to have different kinds of strokes that would give you different kinds of legato. Because drums can't always be bing, bang, boom to me. That was my little thing. So
that's one of the reasons I didn't like the electric guitar as much. To me, and of course that's probably blasphemous to say, but for me, I couldn't get the nuance out of the electric guitar that I could get out of the acoustic guitar, because everything that you did was based on how you touched it and how it, you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
I know a lot of electric guitarists will be so pissed to hear something like that, but for me, when I could take the acoustic guitar, you could do something like that on the body of it, and the next thing you know, the strings start, and then you touch it, and I don't know. There was something more intimate about it to me,
100%. Me and one snare drum. And a couple of sticks and a couple of mallets maybe, and that's it. If you can't make something happen with that, then there's something wrong with you.
Right.
I mean, then there's something lacking musically, because I would hope I could entertain you for 8 minutes on a snare drum.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the thing. It was early. I noticed that there were solo percussion works. I noticed there was solo piano. So why wouldn't there be solo percussion? And I noticed that guys were putting out solo records. Jerome Cooper had put out a solo percussion record. Alex Klein put out a solo album. A lot of
Huh.
percussionists were putting out solo records. And also, Lester Bowie said at a concert that I was at NYU, Muhal said everybody should do a solo concert. And I said, oh, that I learned one of the rules of the AACM from Chicago. And I'm very enamored of their DIY strategy. And that's a really great idea. What's more DIY than getting in a car with all your gear and having a 90-minute show and the possibility of doing a 3-hour workshop with
Yeah.
scores, traveling as a one-person mobile intelligent unit, Mr. Fripp, and that you could do that and people would give you money, and the drum companies would give me money, and do
Yeah.
still to this day give me money, because education is a very big part of what I'm interested in when we're talking about this stuff. I'm not
Yep.
just talking about this stuff to get off on it. I'm talking about this stuff because it's interesting and useful,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well,
Any-
when I when I first got introduced to Taylor guitars, which I had a relationship with because of some circumstance.
Same
But
thing.
anyway, when Taylor Guitars asked me to start doing on their workshop program, they were like, they were the most interesting of all the acoustic guitar companies, because they said, this in the very beginning, they said, you don't even have to play one of our guitars. We just want you to play one of our guitars a little bit during the course of your workshop, but we don't want it to be a sales pitch. We want you to sit down in front of a bunch of guitar guys and play the guitar for an hour and a half and just let them see what you do. And that's how that started. That was the best. That was actually one of the more lucrative things that ever happened to me in the music world, because I'd go to the stores or wherever the venue was. I'd play the guitar. I could play any guitar I wanted to, but I played Taylor's. I liked them and whatever. But anyway, and then when you finished, these things were free to the people, right? And then you had your CDs and your merch and bullshit like that. And so those were the ones. Then I go play at a club later that night and make $50. You know what I'm saying? So
I know exactly.
the educational process of the workshops was really the thing that kind of keeps you going, because then you can have an interaction with the people in the audience. They ask you about the tunings, they ask you about all that stuff. So
And
I
I
love that.
and I know you loved it. I love it. I still
You
thank you.
teach. Well, you're a teacher.
Well, I
I mean,
am.
you're
I'm a university, but I'm also a clinician for DW,
yeah,
LP, Peisty, Musser. Thank you to all those companies, because really they care about education. And I think
yep,
that education grows our world of music in
yep.
a way that we are feeding another generation the good stuff.
Yeah, you're trying to keep the ball rolling. You're just trying to keep the momentum up. And it's now here I am living in a remote village in Mexico. I'm not doing necessarily very much to to perpetuate or to promote that. I'm just living down here with Jane, working in the yard and enjoying what I'm doing now, just on a personal level. And I miss music to a large degree, and I'm trying to play as much as I can, but I'm trying to find that place now where the environment has changed so dramatically for me. We live in a village where people still speak native Maya. I mean, this is a place where three people in this town have a car. I mean, it's like buy the local drunks out the door right now. But anyway, it really is a totally different world, and where as I assimilate into this world, I hear things, smell things, and see things, and I'm trying to figure out how to bring all those together into some musical ideas. And I'm telling you right now, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but I can feel it coming. I can feel it coming, kind of like, you know, somebody put the pie in the window to cool it off, and I can smell it. You know
Well,
what I mean?
I want to
I,
talk about it. you know, speaking of places and special atmospheres and being aware of the vibe that's different where you live now than when you lived in Savannah. And by the way, when we recorded Who Knew Charlie Shoe for Cuneiform, that was such a special vibe in Savannah for me.
Really? It's
Yes,
it's a beautiful city. It's a very interesting place. It really is.
beautiful. And you got me that apartment down the road from your house at your friends, and that was
Yeah.
lovely. I
Yeah.
had my own space, and I walked around at night.
Did you really?
Oh, did I never tell you this?
No. Were you spying on people?
No, 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 no. Everyone was asleep, and the
Yeah.
town at 1 a.m. and the willows,
Oh, the
the,
trees,
the trees would would
yeah,
blow, and there was a warm breeze.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, and it was very surreal. And
Oh, yeah,
I'm a David Lynch guy, so I'm
yeah,
like, the vibe of this is so deep.
yeah.
I'm going to do this every night. I did it the first night. And what did we were there a week, right? I was there a
Yeah,
week.
yeah, yeah.
I did it every night.
I
Or
didn't know.
I would go to bed, like if we were tired, we worked hard. I'd go to bed maybe 11:30. I wake
Yeah,
up at 2 in the morning. I go outside
nice. That's
and
nice.
I'd be like, Dreamland, Savannah, Georgia.
When I
Walk
first moved, yeah, yeah, yeah. When
walk
I
the
first moved
streets.
to, yeah, when I first moved to Savannah, well, right down the street from where we lived was that one avenue that had all those beautiful old live oak trees with the Spanish moss and shit hanging down.
That's
And
right.
when the wind's blowing and all that, and those beautiful old homes. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful cities on earth, and we miss it sometimes. We really do. But we've been living there for 20 some odd years, and it was just time for a change. But I'm so glad that you got to experience it like that, because late at night, walking around in Savannah, it's a very mysterious and beautiful
The
place.
warm breeze,
Yeah, yeah,
the house structures, the way they're built, the way they're set up, the streets,
yeah.
the eddies, the kind of little cul-de-sacs.
Yes, yes.
I mean, that's my thing.
I
So,
know.
when we talk about Charlie Shue, and I
Yeah.
want people to know that, Richard and I came up with a full backstory for this. Richard did original artwork for this. He did the CD cover in the style of this character, Charlie Shue,
There he is.
who I want to talk about his origins and the origins of my character. And it goes back to an incident involving a dobro.
Well, you know what? That place where you stayed, the apartment,
Yes.
that guy, the guy who owns that house, the doctor who lives in that house, is the one that gave me the Vernon McAllister guitar. Yeah,
Okay. I
yeah,
didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you didn't get to meet him because he's always busy, and we were busy. But down in his basement, he has every bootleg Grateful Dead record in the world. He's
Right.
a
He's a
huge
muso.
he's
Yeah.
a huge music fan. Anyway, he bought that guitar from this local guy that had a shop. His name was Randy Wood. He was a real famous luthier that happened to live in Savannah, old school country dude, but made beautiful instruments. But he had that old National Dwoling guitar. And when Steve brought it over that one day, he said, "Richard, what do you want me to take this and do something with it?" Right. And I looked at it and said, "Wow, it sounded and played really, really nicely. It had a great sound to it." And then I noticed on the top of it was etched with like a knife. Vernon McAllister was etched into the metal body of the guitar. And that led me to this sonic tone poem that was the first record I made after doing all the crazy frenetic guitar shit and touring and the two-headed cow at the fair, what the fuck is this? Excuse me. how can anybody play the guitar like that? And it was all fast and crazy. And that guitar, I decided to channel that character. And we wrote actually, my daughter and I wrote sort of a storyline about who Vernon McAllister might have been. And so then I made that record. It was the most popular record I ever made.
It was on cuneiform.
It was the first record, well, the second record I did for Steve. And the New York Times did a podcast, blah, 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 got more press and sold more than anything else I did using a $90 microphone in my attic. And that was it.
And it's called The Legend of Vernon McAllister.
Right.
It's on cuneiform. Find it. Listen to a haunting dobro sound that Richard brings forth from this instrument. And you'll see that he's visualizing a musical history. And I wanted to ask you specifically about this is, do you think that you're channeling something? Do you think that you're connecting with something? Are you imagining a universe?
Combination of both. Because, you know, when you see somebody's name carved in an old guitar like that, you can't help, if you have any imagination at all, you can't help but run with that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And it was just like, I was living in Savannah, Georgia, old Southern vibes and all that bullshit. So this guy, Vernon McAllister, had to have something, some backstory. I tried to find out anything I could, and there was nothing. So that was a catalyst to create a song cycle. And I kept thinking to myself, I made up the story about him working in the steel in the lumber mill, getting hit in the head, and was put in the anyway. If anybody wants to read about it, they can. But anyway, that's the record that started this whole series of mythological characters. And then the second one was Charlie Shue, and Vernon, who was wandering around the countryside playing the guitar because he left his family and his world behind, would take his guitar and just show up someplace and just play for people. And there was a church social in the town where Charlie lived, and Vernon showed up, and Charlie was just a little kid.
And Vernon would play for his supper, essentially.
He would play for his supper. He'd play for change. He'd play for whatever. Excuse me. And then Charlie heard that. Charlie has, remember the story, he has Asperger's syndrome, which makes you very hyper-focused on things, kind of like me. Anyway, and you. Anyway, so I said, that's the second story in the line of these characters. Is Charlie Shue was inspired by Vernon McAllister. And then Charlie had a friend. Charlie lived near Memphis in a small town. And he had a friend. This guy had a nephew that worked at this junkyard in this little town that was just north of Memphis. And his nephew was this burned out rock drummer, that he got him to come up to the little town and help him work in the junkyard. And that was you.
Now, this is where I want our stories to meld, because this is an interesting moment. My recollection for this character.
Yes. Junkfish. Yes.
Where he'd play the washboard as soon as he'd play a hunk of metal or a piece of wood.
Yes.
Was that he came to my mind when you said, I'm doing a follow-up to Vernon. It's a kid who saw who's named Charlie Shue, whose mom took him to a church picnic, and he heard Vernon McAllister, and he came up with this whole other thing of how he plays the guitar and how it's connected. And we created a whole backstory. And I said to you, and you said, do you want to play on it? And I said, only if I get to play a character named Junkfish.
That's right. Okay.
That's right. And I said, and if I get to be a character, which makes perfect sense, we're creating as these two people who are outcasts, who are pre-conventional.
Oh,
and post-conventional,
At the same
unconventional,
You're right.
right?
See,
Like
I'm glad,
some,
see, my mind is a little foggy on how all of this developed, but I remember very clearly now that those were you insisted on that being the
and I
case.
knew his name
Yeah,
was gone because I loved alliteration in novels of, say, Faulkner, of different characters' names
yeah,
indicating something about them, like Bottom in
yeah,
Midsummer Night's Dream, So
right.
I'm thinking Jaden, which is, he's a gem barrel. So it's very basic container, but it's a drum.
Yeah.
And his name is Jaden Barrel, and his nickname is Junkfish because he works at the junkyard. All of this was instantaneous to me.
Wait a minute. You said I don't remember that thing about Jaden Barrel, but that was in your
Yes.
mind. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that
So
and that he
Jaden
took
Barrel. That's
took
right.
the
That's right.
nickname Junkfish because he fished around in the junk and he found these instruments and he would bang on them and people
Right.
knew him as a guy who could play because my backstory went as far as he saw ELP. He snuck in. He didn't have money for tickets, and he snuck in to see ELP. And what town were we in? Was that Arkansas for Charlie?
Yeah. It was in northeastern Arkansas. Yeah.
And so he saw ELP somewhere in Little Rock or whatever, and
Yeah.
he
Or
fell
Memphis.
in
Yeah.
love with prog rock drumming, but he had no money, so he could never own the big percussion setup that Carl Palmer had, and so he did it with what little junk he could,
Oh my
and that
God.
became your attic stairs. That became the water bottle, water jug. It became the lard can, which was my bass drum because it was so big, but it was a can. It
Yeah.
became the water splashing. It became, okay, what if this guy was so blown out by acid that he would conceptualize,
Yeah.
how do I play with this outcast guitarist
Yeah.
in a way that would work perfectly? Because
Yeah.
it ain't drum set and electric guitar,
No.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so I went into that zone where all I did was I flew down to Savannah. You picked me up, and all I had was my mallets and my bows.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
had no instruments, and we
We went around.
found.
Yeah. Well, before you got there, I had the lard can. I had a few things like that. I had a washboard. I found you a washboard,
I
and
asked for some things. Yeah.
yeah, you asked for some things, and I went around and found them as best as could. Then we looked for some other things, and uh, and then by the time it was all over with, we recorded in my garage studio thing, and that was so much fun because you were just sitting on the floor with all the shit around you. We still have photographs of that somewhere. I just don't know where that shit is, but anyway, so you put yourself in that place, and it was like it was just absolutely. Now, when you decided, all of it was just amazing. And I had already recorded the guitar parts, right?
That's right.
And I but they weren't enough. The guitar
They
parts,
weren't arranged.
no, they weren't really enough. And so, but I didn't. After I recorded the guitar parts, and I gave those to you to listen to, and you listened to those, and you surrounded yourself with all the things that you wanted to use. You listen to the guitar parts, which are basically unedited, by the way, and you just put yourself into it. And it was kind of like this idea of it was like the icing on the cake and all kinds of things. It was amazing. We had this little foundation with the guitar parts, and then you just built around it like that organically, and it was fucking amazing.
I would do multiple percussion layers.
Yep.
I would accentuate texture changes or tempo changes or whatever it was you were doing.
And
Um,
melodies.
melodies were in play.
When you
Um,
got the when you got that, we borrowed that glockenspiel from the high school, and on that song, it's just,
Lullaby.
I really want to cry every time I hear that.
Lullaby is one of the most moving things I've ever done in my life.
To me, the guitar song was nice, but when you added the glockenspiel to it, it's like Forgotten Lullaby. Yeah, that's the
Oh,
one. Anyway,
Forgotten Lullaby. Oh, the closing track of Charlie Shoe, folks.
yep. Anyway, so I don't want to talk about it. Okay, yeah, okay.
We're
There it
not
is.
going to talk about that, but let's talk about something which was,
But I want to talk more about Charlie if you want
yes,
to. And I really think that the experience of doing all that and working together and all that, and having Gabe Herman help us mix it all when you were up in, I guess he was in Connecticut at the
Boston
time.
area, I think.
Yeah. So, and then you guys worked on that, and it was just fantastic. And then what really disappointed me the most, we didn't tour it
We
because I wasn't
didn't.
capable. We didn't because I couldn't. I couldn't. My
It
hands
would
were
have been a
starting.
big production.
Oh yeah.
That's the other thing when we really discussed it, because I fought for
Thank
it.
you. I
It would have
know.
been a big production involving costumes and setups and some sort of visual backdrop. It would have
Yeah.
been a real, but easily imagined and produced today.
Well, maybe
It
we
was
could
a different
make it.
world.
Yeah, maybe we can make it an animated feature.
Well, the story of the two outcasts finding each other, making this weird music, the thing,
Yeah.
giving it you know, when there's a couple things I want to mention about this period, this idea. One was I was always fascinated by antebellum Southern culture.
Uh-huh.
So I had spent enough time, and I know this is your shit. So I had spent enough time touring in the South with various acts, including Mahavishnu Project, Keneally-Bendian-Lunn, playing Kentucky,
Oh,
Playing West Virginia. I mean, I knew the vibe was different. But
yeah.
I also will tell you this: my Armenian grandmother, Matilda Margaret, was born and raised in Richmond.
Really?
Yes. So there was an Armenian community in Richmond, Virginia in the 40s, 50s, what have you. And so I had a connection to sweet tea in the summer through my grandmother. That's a very fond memory I have of living in New Jersey, but she would always make sweet tea. And
Uh-huh.
she brought Southern culture, and she was like Armenian, as she could speak fluent Armenian, but she was also Southern. So I always had felt some affinity for Southern culture. So this was
Right.
my chance to imagine a universe of surreal Southern culture.
Right. Right.
Because
Right.
I'll always skew that way because I think the most reality comes out in
Well,
surreality.
and when you get down to it, um, uh, when you talk about Southern culture and Southern literature and Southern art, things like that, and you just take William Faulkner.
Yes,
And I get William Faulkner, James Joyce. Like there you go, William
100%.
Faulkner, James Joyce. They were in two completely separate, completely different periods, and not completely different periods, but dramatically different backgrounds and blah blah blah. But when you talk about the abstract nature of trying to explain things and describe things with words, like those two guys did, but still be like kindred spirits in the methods that they used. I mean, and I don't know what I'm really saying right now,
Well,
except that
can I jump in?
yeah,
I
yeah,
think the idea of snapshots, the idea of subtext, the idea of what is culture really saying about power, what
yeah,
is culture really saying about class, what is the sensitive person to do in these situations,
right.
so much of the outsider figures into our stories, but at the same time we exist in the world of magazine articles for you and university courses for me, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
we're plugged in, but yet we are apart. And Steve Morse
Right.
would tell you the same thing. He's a farmer who happens to have music industry gigs.
Right, right,
You
right,
know what I
right, right.
mean? And he has a hay farm, and that's what he does. He flies, and he has
Yep,
some
yep,
gigs.
right.
And
Yep.
it's
And that's
incredible, because that's where I see you as an outsider, but a real virtuoso, deep, soulful. When you got onto this idea of becoming someone else to channel some other form of music that wouldn't show off your chops, because it's so funny, that's the experience I had was,
right,
well, my guy
right.
thinks he might have chops, but he doesn't really have chops. So he's going to do, but he actually has a few cool rhythmic ideas, and he can hear a melody when he hears like Charlie plays something,
Yeah.
and their connection is very true.
Right. Well, and you know what the idea of, and I don't know if this really makes any sense, but as far as the idea of using the fictional characters as a jumping off point, because as you well know, when you go out and play music and you're on stage and you're introduced as who you are and people adore you and they listen to you and they know your name and they know who you are and they expect something of you, right? When you go do that, when you go do that thing, there's Greg. He's gonna fucking blow my mind. He's gonna play the drums like nobody plays the drums or whatever like that. And when you get to a certain point where you go like, in me, for my mental state, I was kind of tired of thinking about myself. I wanted to take myself out of it. And when I saw the opportunity with the Vernon McAllister character, I said, perfect opportunity to take myself out of it, reinvent myself, but still use the tools that I had available to me to paint a whole different picture and start with a whole new palette and then go from there and subsequently make other things that have to do with much less about virtuosity and much more about thoughtfulness and patience and all the different things that go along with maybe getting older or whatever like that. You know what I mean?
Atmosphere,
Yeah,
sense of place,
yeah,
time
yep,
of day, because I think people should realize this is a concept album where you're really
yes,
starting in the morning and ending at night.
that's exactly right.
It's a day in the life. We
Yeah,
knew this form. We worked this form.
yeah, yeah,
You've
yeah,
got to hear this record if you haven't heard it. It tells a story in the liner notes of detail, but you can also then hear it sonified in the music,
yeah,
sonified by partially is Richard doing field recordings. Part
yep,
of it
yep,
is that everything we did, we might have done outside and a plane would fly overhead. There was a
yep,
sense of place.
yep.
And so when I went into post production, after we had recorded at your place, including your porch, where I did sweeping and brooming and
Oh
raking,
my God. Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah,
that
yeah.
was
Had
incredible.
you ever done that before? Had you ever done that before?
No, no, no. I just knew it would work. Well, I'd played brushes, so they're
Yeah,
just
but
big. They're big brushes.
they're big brooms. They're little brooms. Brushes are little
Brushes
brooms.
are little brooms.
Brushes. Hey, that's a good song title. Brushes are little brooms.
And then
Hey,
speaking of little, you and I have spoken about the track Itty Bitty Ditty. There's a few on
yes.
this record that are special. Itty Bitty Ditty was a moment where Gabe Herman had done a pre before I walk in mix, which is I appreciate. I have a something to start from, and everything had a certain or different or some type of reverb, which I very much approved of because sense of place so much for me is resonance.
Sure.
Like how wide are we?
Yeah.
How close are we?
Yeah.
So when we got to Itty Bitty Ditty, I want you to know that I knew visually what that music was was Charlie and Junkfish sitting on, let's say, Charlie's dad's front porch on the floor. Maybe there's a carpet, old beat up carpet, and they're playing this piece and it's dead as fuck. The sound is like the humidity of the air because it's
Yeah.
so hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's just that.
Everything's
And
just stuck in that. Yeah. Yeah.
I said to him, no reverb, Gabe.
Yep.
No reverb on
Yep.
this one. Make this one this different place where they're just sitting next to each other and it sounds small, but it's so cool. Because I had
Yeah.
like little dink-a-dink things and wood and metal scraps.
Well, you know, and that guitar, that was one of those guitars I found for like $50. It was an old harmony guitar, had absolutely it had absolutely no sonic quality at all. It was like it might as well be made out of plywood. But for something like that, and for some of the slide work, it's perfect. It was perfect for that because it was
This
just
is
like
it.
it was like like that. And then when you did the remember we entered and that song was already recorded. Now
Right.
I know this may be too much information, but
We're already
that song had
past that.
anyway, but the song was already recorded. But
Right.
we wanted to introduce the song with you playing tick 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 tick. Remember you
Right.
start
Dig it out, dot dig it on.
yeah,
Right.
and then the guitar part kicks in, which made it
Mhm.
feel very, very, very live. You know what I mean?
I think
So
so. And it was like a song they knew. It was their single. It
yeah,
was their happy place. I mean, God, man, I pitched this story to so many people in Hollywood and LA and stuff. And it's
you
just,
did.
oh, yeah. I mean, you had concerns about it being related to other stories, but I think it's its own thing
Oh yeah,
to the
totally.
point where if it could have been executed properly, like if you got an executive producer like Keanu who really knew Beefheart and knew Southern, like knew Colonel Bruce.
Yeah,
If you had someone like, I feel like that was my Colonel Bruce record because I was already infected with Colonel Bruce and the
yeah,
whole Georgia scene
yeah.
and the idea that that was this whole other weirdness, like weird
Well,
Matt Mundy from fucking
yeah,
playing mandolin shit. These
yeah,
people,
yeah.
O'Teal, all those. I honestly, this record we're talking about, Charlie Shoe, was so influenced by Colonel Bruce because I thought, well, of course there's madness in the South. There's inbreeding. But
Oh,
there's more
I can,
than that. There's
yeah,
class shit. There's so much like danger. There's so much
yeah,
history of
right,
conflict and just so much drama. And yet there's so much beauty. Charlie Shoe is its own story. It's a relationship story and also the idea of individualism
right,
where we don't know when we say conventional, post-conventional, pre-conventional, where does high art exist? When people talk about outsider art, why are they interested in that? Because it's
right,
someone who came up with something out of thin air, and we wonder, how could they come up with that out of thin air?
right, right, right,
Right?
right. Here's a good one for you. For me, come at you on this one. I was being interviewed by some magazine somewhere, and we were talking about I'm a visual artist and I do this and I do that. They said, well, how can you be so creative like that? And I answered him and I said, because I'm very irresponsible. Don't you think
Yeah.
that's perfect though? But just as an idea of saying like when you're getting into that place of this ultimate creative thing, you know, you become very, you don't want to shower, you don't want to wash dishes, you don't want to clean house, you don't want to do anything. You just
You're
want to
funny.
go.
I've worked with all of the most creative guitarists from Nels Cline to Derek Bailey. And Derek used to say all the time, "Hun, I can't do the dishes. I need to practice."
No way. Are you
Yes,
serious? Oh,
totally. He said it to me more than once. He's like, "Oh, it's really convenient. You just say, oh, gotta practice."
oh my
He
God.
constantly did that and he would
Yeah,
practice. I mean, I'm just
yeah,
saying, it's like, but it's so funny because he did understand like this you're completely ensconced in your thing and you're never not doing your thing. Even I remember Shannon Jackson telling me he used to practice drums in his mind.
huh.
100%. 100%.
Wow.
100%.
You what? I would used to sit down and watch when I was making up the songs. I would sit down. I would at night close my eyes and I would see my hands on the fretboard,
Yeah.
memorizing those chord forms and all that stuff because that's the way I remembered these things.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Not
so
having to think about it. I mean,
yeah,
there was also this, let me just say again about Charlie's Shoe. My approach was not to be too precious about accuracy.
right.
So there would be time because Charlie's time wasn't perfect. So I would have to sort of like deal with Charlie's little Rollantondos or little, retardandos. But I would always be with him. And usually it wasn't many. I remember maybe we did 3 or 4 takes on a couple, but the idea that we were fluid in time
Yes, yes,
was
yes.
one of the things I felt was very authentic about it. That
It
we
was also
weren't metronomically perfect.
no,
And
no,
it's two guys that were really, we could have corrected everything. We could have done it perfectly, but I
right.
felt free. I felt like, what if this guy was just having fun and he's just reacting to the guitar parts that Charlie wrote? And you're like, so who brought us together in the story, Rich? How did we meet in the story?
You're talking about the British guy?
Who brought Junkfish and Charlie Shoe together in the
No, it
story?
was junk. It was junk. Well, okay. Oh God, it was Junkfish's uncle had the place in town. God, losing my mind. Um, help me out.
We'll edit it. No, I just wanted to try to remember a little bit of the underlying backstory that we wrote for each of the interactions and where things were going and how they met. But anyway,
Oh wait, tell me. But I really want to try to remember this. Who was it that introduced us?
there
Or
was
do you remember?
something to do with the air conditioning place that Charlie worked at, connected with the junk yard that that Junkfish worked at. Correct?
I don't remember. This is insane to be talking about two
Do
fictional
you believe we're
characters.
talking about this? But I felt that there was enough backstory for both characters that I made choices based upon backstory.
Right,
So I even to the point of I had to have a backstory for why there's glockenspiel.
right.
I so badly glockenspiel, as people will know from my entire career, has been a fetish of mine for
Yeah.
many years. And there's the new Tim Motzer thing that I'm working on where it's just guitar and glockenspiel, one of the tracks.
Oh
And it's
God.
just, to me, it's just the most beautiful little, if you can play glockenspiel, you can play percussion music.
Yeah.
So I felt like, how did this poor guy who worked at a junkyard find a glockenspiel? And the first thing that came to my mind was he stole it. He broke into a grammar school and he stole it
Oh,
from the band room.
oh
And
my
it was just
God.
like, why wouldn't I say that? It was just everything
Yeah.
about it was so organic.
Yeah.
And,
And you know what? Yeah. The way that we decided to put the songs together is like, okay, it's almost like what I said about the British guy who was the documentarian discovering this whole situation with Vernon and all that. It was like the songs existed, but the recordings existed of Charlie and Junkfish, but there was never any description or understanding or reasoning behind why they existed. They're like documents. You know what I'm saying? Why am I hearing these recordings, right?
wow,
Did
wow.
I just accidentally wander into this room or did I
Yeah,
wander?
yeah.
That's why I like stuff like that is because it gives the people that are listening to it a sense of discovery. You know what I'm saying? And I think that
100%.
that's one of the most important things about it. It's like, well, anyway, but you see what I'm saying. You see what I'm
A
trying to.
hundred percent. So I'm
Yeah.
saying, so we were discovering, I was discovering, certainly the decision to play Water Bucket happened in the moment. In the moment,
Had you
100%.
never thought about that before?
I will tell
Well, I'm
you
sure you.
the only way that I can reference it that I still can't break through is summers on the Jersey Shore, standing in the ocean and clapping on top of the waves,
Oh my
and
God.
being aware of that splashy sound, being somehow childlike or
My
joyful. It
God.
was so simple. You could actually play water. And then it just hit me. I don't know. I got lucky because I feel it's the best documentation of me playing anything is playing water. And we
It
put the
was beautiful.
microphones
Yeah.
inside the tub of water and two
Yeah.
outside,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
two that we covered with condoms, and then the two outside. They had to be. But the fact that you could still get, we got not subterranean. What is it? Sub hydrospheric recordings. Sub
Submariners. It was a Submariner.
submariner recordings.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Right. Right.
right.
No,
I
when you
remember. And that was the whole thing for me was rakes and brooms, water, uh, bottles and cans,
Yep.
um, pieces of wood, pieces of metal. If you can't make a staircase,
Staircase.
springs on the staircase.
That blew everybody's mind. I played that song for a lot of different drummers and percussionists and stuff like that and friends.
Hmm.
that that is just one of the most ridiculous things I've ever, I mean, in a good way, of course. It's one of the most ridiculous things anybody's ever heard. It's just so crazy. And the only reason we did it is because it just happened to be in the garage. And we pulled down the staircase. I think, did you say like, well, I don't know why we pulled that down.
Well, you pull it down and it goes.
I know, but
Right.
did you get the idea why do we pull the staircase down?
Well, I already knew about springs because springs
Yeah.
did exist in percussion land for years. So to find out that now there's a chamber, which is the attic, that's going to act as the resonator for the springs, and we put mics up in the attic, and I could play the springs and just get the richest, fullest spring sound you'd ever want.
Oh
How
my
would you
God.
not do it?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
the attitude. And so it was a very, very joyful discovering of anything, of just going, what about that?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I did rakes. Maybe I should do brooms. Do you have a
Did
broom,
you?
Richard? Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a broom over there. Okay, let me just try this broom. And can you set up the mic down there? I'm just going to do some brooming.
That was just so brilliant. I love that. And the very last sound on the staircase was, you remember how when the staircase goes back up, it goes a clink like, and it clunks closed on the
Yeah.
ceiling. That was the end of the song. Clunk. Like
Yeah.
it was just really, 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 really
Yeah,
nice.
things like that. Things where the water bowls in the mixing bowls in the water, and
Yep.
being able to bend pitches, and
Yep.
relating that to the chimes that you recorded from a local church.
Yep. Yep.
There were
Yep.
so many things that were the bowls that I took from your kitchen that happened to be in the key of every song that we played was really weird. Like, yeah,
Well, you
okay,
see,
that
obviously, I'm influenced by cooking as well. See, so,
I mean, how did that work out? And
I don't know.
I bowed your pans and I bowed your pot
Yeah,
tops. So
yeah,
it was
yeah,
like it was really funny. Great example of a will to make something follow through 100%, and the fact that that made it happen. That
yeah,
momentum gave it
yeah.
the ability to. I think it's a perfect project. Actually,
Well,
I think
I do
it's
too. I'm disappointed. I guess I'm disappointed. Um, I, I, I would love to have seen. This is something I've always thought about. I would love to have seen placement on some soundtracks for some cinema or
it's
anything.
available. It's available.
Well, good. I mean, I think that would, some of that stuff on that record. I mean, Itty Bitty Ditty would be to me, it's like, how would a perfect introduction to a tune? like a really good cartoon, like Ren and Stimpy or something like that. You know, I think that would be like the perfect. Low network fan. Go ahead.
Squid Billies in our time world would
Yeah,
have that as its opening theme. And honestly, it is. It's a perfect little ditty.
yeah, it
And
is.
and so, I believe in reincarnation and all of the wordplay that we used in the thing.
Yeah,
Junk fish out of water,
yep,
relating back to some vague notion of prog rock in some weird way. There's always a guy who in the South, when all those bands toured the South, they got to hear
yeah,
Yes, they got to hear Genesis, they got to hear King Crimson playing
right.
with Joe Cocker or whoever the fuck it was, like Bloodwind Pig. Richard, you know all these bands, right? Remember
Yeah,
Bloodwind
yeah,
Pig, Rich?
yeah, 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 yeah. I don't remember when I was a kid, we would go to
Black
Little
Oak,
Rock.
Arkansas, bro.
Oh, let me tell you a funny story about Black Oak, Arkansas. It'll be real quick, real quick. I promise you, real quick. Okay.
Oh
My
yeah.
friend, this is when Black Oak they were basically done for. And Jim Dandy was like way, way out. Anyway, my
Ah,
friend was on the, what do they call it? The student union. They would hire music performance. They would hire bands or artists to play at the college, right?
yeah, we all
And
had it. Yep.
Black Oak was they were in the shitter at this point, right? And so my friend was on the committee to hire the band, so they decided to hire Black Oak, Arkansas, because they were super cheap at that point. And it was in Little Rock. It's some junior college. And my friend said, okay, so they got Black Oak to come play at this thing. And everybody was like, the band was out there playing and playing. And Jim Dandy was still backstage getting whatever going on with
Wow.
with the groupies in the back. And
Really? Wow.
he was real fucked up. And my friend said he came out on stage. And I swear to God, this is a true story. He came out on stage and he just grabbed the microphone and he goes, "You Little Rock girls are making Jim Dandy horny," like that. And then he just fell out and passed out and fell off the stage into the crowd. And that was the end of the show. And that was the end of the show. Isn't that great, though? I love that story.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. You making me horny. Anyway, so I'm
Me or
sorry.
all, but I wanted to say I was thinking about this recently how one of his famous intros was "We're all just mutants of the monster."
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Right?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Mutant. We are mutants of the monster, Rich. Aren't we?
yeah, that's right. That's
Because
right.
you said okay, people. Oh, what was it? You're famous. Oh, I was raised by wolves or whatever. No, you're just a mutant. You're like
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of us who's just like, we touch something and it's a thing, and then we're connected to it, and then somehow we think, oh, what if I touched it in all these different ways, and what if I changed this about it? But it's still the same thing because it's a romance with the instrument, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah. Exactly. Yep,
Can I
yep. That's
touch that way? What if I
yeah,
touch this way?
yeah,
I'm not being true if I don't think all these different ways of, and also, by the way, slow.
yeah, yeah,
When you reach a certain age, Rich, slow.
yeah.
And the momentum of that becomes so important, doesn't it?
Right. It also becomes more the slowness of it, or the patience around it, which Vernon McAllister was a jumping off point for me. Was it was more sensual. It was
Yeah.
just more sensual, in a way, you know. And then when you said mutant, I wanted to go back to the one of the other chapters in this Vernon McAllister thing was the story of Vernon being forced into a sexual act with an alien in that record called Celeste. Have you ever heard that record?
Oh, that's the story of Celeste?
Yeah, Vernon was abducted by aliens when he was sleeping in the woods in Mississippi, and he was forced into a sexual encounter with an alien female,
Man, you're a
and
piece of work. Oh my
and
God.
their offspring is Celeste, and she was beamed down to Earth, and she became an itinerant musician on Earth. And that's when I got the guitar that was made for Martin guitars that had a synth, I mean a theremin built into it. And Martin let me use that guitar to make that record. It's a good record, actually. It's pretty good, you know.
Is
There's
that
no
a
percussion.
cuneiform?
No, I released that on my own. I released that on my
Where can
own.
people find your stuff, Rich?
I guess what's it called? Oh, I mean, you just go on the internet and type in my name, and those things pop up, I guess. Um, like Amazon and places like that.
Yeah, look for Who Knew Charlie Shoe. Look for The Legend of Vernon McAllister. Look for uh, The
Celeste
Poetry
too,
of
yeah.
Appliance.
Oh yeah, Poetry of Appliance is a good record, yeah. But I just really, I don't know, the idea that, you know, well, first of all, uh, I'm going to give you a little, but I can't believe your tenacity in all of this with going on year after year after year after year, you know, it's with all kinds of obstacles in the way and still continuing to do it. It's pretty, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. Like I said, I'm kind of I'm chilling now down here, trying to reassess everything musically. It'll happen. I got my little studio set up in the back here, but I just got to wait for it to be just that. I got to feel it, you know. And until I feel it, I'm not going to even bother with it. You know, I'm going to wait.
And I appreciate so much you saying that, Rich,
Yeah. Well.
because to be quite frank with you and everyone, it's what keeps me going is that it's ongoing and that,
Yep.
you know, the music is a force for good and the individual and the voice of the individual is important to maintain in today's society. And look, if we've done nothing else, we've done that. I mean,
Yeah.
all of the music I've ever championed has been about the individual.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Each guy
You
is
hear?
just one weird figure after another. I mean, everybody's just a different way of look. And look at Parch.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
look at Beefheart, look at Zappa, look at Varese, look at any of these major figures, and you just see they each had their own way of putting it together. And then that we found a way. And I had always hoped that we would do, to be frank, Richard, I'd always hoped we could do a follow up. I understand, you know, that may not be possible, but I know that it's just something that maybe you can play on a track on something of mine. I would really love to have you join in on
Of
something.
course. I mean, the thing, I have a studio here and all that, and I really
I'd
would
like
like.
to have you play slide on something.
That'd be good. Now, also, I would like to get you. I want to revisit the Montauk sessions that I did
Oh,
with Jay. You know, did you ever get a copy of the final mix on all that?
no, sir, if you don't mind.
Well, I'll try to. I can't mail anything from down here, except I could send it on a donkey, and maybe you'll get it eventually. But anyway, but I'm going to talk to Jay and see if he can forward you a copy of that.
Great.
I'll try anyway. But I think that's just ready made
Maybe
for you
there's
to.
that because I think ready made is a way we've already worked successfully. So
Yeah, yeah. But
I could orchestrate.
if my hands worked better,
I
I have
understand.
neurop,
I
I have the
understand.
neuropathy, and
Yeah,
but yeah, of course, it'd be really fun to do something. Now, even if we could do it remotely, that'd be fine, right?
everything's remotely now. You kidding? I mean, the fact that I'm looking at you having this conversation with you when you're in a different time zone, let us not underestimate how fucking heavy that is.
Yeah, but I'm going to give you a hug. See, I'm going
Yeah,
to give
right on, man.
you a hug. I felt you.
Yeah, man. I mean, we went deep into some stuff, and I think that that is a standout in my discography. I always tell people about you. I always bring up Charlie Shue in my production course. where I talk about how to establish place, how to establish atmosphere, how to establish use of reverb to create a sense of space. There's just so many things that where every piece is its own scene in that movie that doesn't exist.
But keep it up. It might somewhere down the line. It might.
It seems like if you really cared and paid attention, you'd see the movie there right away. But the idea of, I think yours, I will say full credit to you that it was a morning to evening deal.
Yeah.
Was a full day. That was important to the whole thing. And then just the falling off into dreamland.
Yeah.
For me, it's a perfect arc.
Well, that's coming from you. It means an awful lot to me. It really does.
I love it. I have done nothing like it. I'm sort of veering toward this type of thing with Tim Motzer in terms of really limiting what percussion goes into any given guitar scape.
Yeah.
Because you guys are so good at setting up a soundscape. And it's kind of like, well, what do I do to be in that scape?
Right. Well, right. And that comes along with, I think, as we get older, not that I'm a lot older than you are, but I am older than you are. And the patience, the aspect of patience and thoughtfulness becomes more and more important as time goes on. I don't know how old Tim is. I have no earthly idea, but I know he's extremely thoughtful as a guitarist.
Extremely intentional, extremely clear in terms of color composition, texture composition.
Right.
This is a really interesting thing in the post Ferbertronics world, certainly in a post Torn world where, now sound painting in the guitar world is a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear the train. We have a good train here. So in that case, like Charlie Shue, yes, but also Vernon McAllister has such an interesting use of the dobro and such an interesting use of the ebow.
Yeah. And I used the violin bow on that record as well, but the ebow and that, but basically what it was with Vernon was about the guitar and trying to evoke sounds and atmosphere out of the guitar, almost like the guitar was telling the story, And in Charlie, it was more about this funny kid that learned how to play the guitar a certain way. But with Vernon, it was all about trying to say, it's like looking into a crystal ball and trying to see what you could get out of it just by letting it do what it does.
And I think that's why I knew immediately what to say to you, is because you had sent me Vernon McAllister. And for the record, I listened to it. I got a very serious chill down the spine from it and a real sense of place from it. So when you said Charlie Shue to me, I already knew what was going to happen.
I'm glad you did.
I have to be honest. I think that when something registers and something then follows through on that and you don't recognize it, you're missing out. But when I saw that moment, I was like, oh, I completely understand what you're talking about. Yes, let's do this.
Yeah.
And that's one of life's pleasures, Richard Leo Johnson. And speaking to you was a real pleasure.
Oh, Greg, I miss seeing you. I really do. And we're going to be coming up to New York to see our daughter at some point.
I hope so.
We've got to get together. And, I welcome you to come visit us down here in our crazy little village,
I would be so into that. And you would really dig this area that I'm in now. And certainly.
Oh, here come the dogs. Here come the dogs.
Okay. Well, I will leave it there, Richard, and just say, just everybody check out Richard Leo Johnson online, check out his photography, check out his beautiful guitar work in so many different settings. He's one of my favorite musicians in the world. And I have a thing for guitar players. So,
I've got a thing for percussionists, obviously, too. So,
and there's a thing. Derek Bailey had a thing for percussionists. So there's a
yeah,
thing. It's like we're
yeah,
kind of both percussionists in a way,
exactly, exactly.
right?
Yeah,
We're kind of both
yeah,
punching away.
yeah. My thumb is the equivalent to your kick drum. Okay, we'll just say thump,
It's
thump,
so
thump.
true. But
Yeah, yeah,
right, so a multi-limbed approach to something.
right,
You
right.
know, you have 10, I have 4, but it's kind of
No,
interesting.
you don't. You play with your fingers too. I know
Well,
you
okay,
play with
right. So we have multiples on each, on
yeah.
certainly
So
on
you
the
got 12,
hands.
you got 12, and I've only got 10. So I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
I see
Yeah,
where you're going with that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, there's
Yeah.
that. So it's funny because uh you played solo, I play solo. My research CD has a lot of drum set solo pieces on it. And I think that trying to carry through an idea on a solo instrument is the hardest thing to do. It's the
Yeah, and that's
ultimate
how that's how
challenge.
that's how I grew up. I'd never played in a band, really, to speak of at all. I mean, that was it. I mean, the guitar and myself and working through all those things, and it teaches you a lot. And I mean, and you never forget it. A lot of that stuff you just don't forget that stuff. Once you go through that process, you never forget it. So I know I'm talking too much.
No, you're not.
Anyway,
It's just this is the way we talk, and I really appreciate the insights. You're one of the heavier cats, man. I mean, to
well,
do what you've done in visual world and sonic world is really quite something amazing.
well, I love you, brother. And I'll talk to you as soon as possible, okay? We'll follow up with a good old phone call, all right?
Yeah, everybody, thank you. My guest has been Richard Leo Johnson, and the ProgCast thanks you for listening. Check me out on bendianmusic.com. I'm always happy to hear from people and always happy to take on new students. Richard Leo Johnson, he's an American treasure, and I hope everyone will check out our record, Charlie Shoe. Who knew Charlie Shoe on Cuneiform Records? And we'll see you guys next time.